let's get to SEC power rankings. We did get off topic talking about the looks, I guess, the aesthetic beauty or lack thereof of Jimbo Fisher's wife. So we don't need to stand on that. SEC power rankings. Let me just go ahead and start. Is Georgia number one as I pull it up on offthehooksports.com?
I don't have it up yet. I'll have it up this afternoon. Sorry.
Okay. So Georgia's number one, right?
Georgia's number one. They actually took the spot back from Alabama, who I had at number one for a couple of weeks because Alabama had just been looking so good, even though Alabama had a loss. But Georgia's back to number one because of what they've done. And Alabama's number two. My controversy is I've moved LSU up to number 3 and Ole Miss to number 4, even though Ole Miss beat LSU. But I think right now LSU is better than Ole Miss, honestly.
Probably so. I think Lane Kiffin is the type of coach that has a couple of surprises early in the season. I think that Brian Kelly's teams continue to get better fundamentally. So I wouldn't have an argument with that. 2 weeks ago, maybe it was Ole Miss. Now it's maybe LSU. I could see that.
Yeah. Number 5, I've got Ole Miss and LSU both ahead of Missouri. Missouri looked great last week, but they had to squeak by Florida on Saturday because it took the worst 4th and 17 defensive alignment I think I've ever seen in college football by Billy Napier to allow Missouri to win that game. So I dropped Missouri to 5, but still had to have them ahead of Tennessee at number 6 in the SEC. And quite honestly, Dave, the only reason Tennessee is even that high is because I think there's just so many issues with the rest of the teams in the SEC that I'll get to.
Okay, so if your bad season, if your most disappointing season of recent memory is Tennessee at number 6 in the power rankings, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, and honestly, it's funny because people last night were talking about Josh Dobbs and how they were trying to compare Tennessee going 8-4 this season and say, well, y'all were so upset when Butch Jones went 8-4. And we're like, yeah, because Tennessee fans were upset about that because that was Butch Jones's 4th year. And that was his peak year where he had a bunch of NFL talent. That was his best team. Nobody went into this season thinking this was going to be Josh Heupel's best team, right?
No.
And so it's a different, it's a different type of 8-4, guys. Okay. It's 8-4 after you lost your quarterback, your go-to receiver. You lost a ton of talent. Butch Jones went 8-4 after returning everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So this on our message board this weekend hurt or help the Vols in recruiting. You can go to our YouTube channel and vote on that. Pretty 50-50. 54% said no, that's too bad of a loss. It looks bad. Yes, too many prospects on hand, and there were dozens. So that's 46%. So that's where we stand there. Out of your power rankings, Caleb, how many teams do you think, A, in the next 3 years can win an SEC championship? And B, how many teams should be considered an annual participant in the college football playoff? C, win a national title. So out of the SEC teams, I will go ahead and take a look at them. I think that in the next 3 to 5 years, LSU can win a national title. Alabama can win a national title. I think that Georgia can win a national title. If you want to say 3 years, I would say Tennessee can be an annual participant in the college football playoff, but probably not a national title. If you want to extend me out 5 years, give me a couple more recruiting classes, I'll say that Tennessee is one of the teams in the SEC that can win a national title, given their coaching and what they have building. Depends if you want to go 3 or 5 years, Caleb. How would you break that down to teams that can actually win a ring or teams that can compete for a ring year in and year out?
So we're talking about teams that can go to the 12-team college football playoff first.
I forgot it was 12, actually, so I should expand my list. But go ahead under that premise.
Yes. Okay, teams that can go to the college football playoff. I think Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee can all go to the playoff. Texas A&M can go to the playoff. South Carolina can go to the playoff. Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida. Hell, I think the whole SEC outside of Vanderbilt could go to the playoff. I think 13 of the 14 teams could get to a 12-team playoff one year. Now, who can win a national title? Georgia, Alabama, LSU. I think Tennessee could actually win a national title with what Josh Heupel's doing. Texas A&M, they are the right coach. They're winning a national title. They got the best resources in the country. It's a better job than Tennessee. And then I think Florida.
South Carolina's final record last year after beating.
They were 8-4. They were 8-4.
Okay, that's their best year. I'm going to differ with you. I don't think that South Carolina will ever be in a position to be consistently good enough throughout the season to make a run in the college football playoff.
If there was a 12-team playoff in the early 2010s, they would have made it 4 years in a row under Steve Spurrier, though.
Well, Shane Beamer ain't Steve Spurrier.
You didn't say under the current head coach, okay?
Well, no, that's what I mean. Under the current coach and their
talent base
and what they have rolling for them now.
Okay, that's a different story.
Like, it's not Florida. Florida's not in that group until they get rid of Billy Napier.
Yeah, no, I agree. Under the current coach making the playoff, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and I would say Kentucky. I would say those 8 teams under their current coaches, because Kentucky could squeak in. The ones that could compete for titles, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. Those 5.
Portions of the program brought to you by Don Self of State Farm. Customer service still matters. State Farm agent Don Self and his team take customer service seriously. For well over 40 years, they have built their business and reputation on taking care of their customers. Collegedale, Ottawa, as well as the greater Chattanooga area. Customer service still matters. Now, Rocky Top Tom has an issue with Caleb, as a lot of people do. Whoa. Did you mean, did your ears deceive me, or did you throw down the gauntlet there? A&M is not a better job than UT. Ha. I'm sorry, brother. Thoughts?
Rocky Top Tom, give me a bit of evidence this century that shows Tennessee's a better job than A&M. Seriously, bit of evidence. I need something. And don't say 1998. That didn't even happen this century. Okay,
well, they hired a better coach.
I'm sorry?
Tennessee hired a better coach eventually.
This isn't about who has the better coach. This is which is a better job. Texas A&M is a better job.
A&M's a coin flip, okay? Because A&M has more money than God, okay? But A&M also has to compete against Texas and other smaller schools. So those smaller schools can every once in a while cherry pick a top player that you might slide to running back, but he wants to play quarterback at a Texas Tech or a TCU or something like that. So there's that factor. And then Texas is still the state school. So much like Auburn has to overcome that Alabama hump, A&M, despite the money and despite an incredible amount of facilities, they're always going to have to overcome we ain't Bama, right?
Well, it's not the same. There's a lot more talent in Texas. Oklahoma has built a brand getting Texas recruits. Why can't Texas A&M, even with Texas there? So I'm sorry, Texas A&M is a better job than Tennessee. You guys can hate on that all day, but Texas A&M is a better job than Tennessee. And I went on this rant a few weeks ago. That does not mean Tennessee can't be better. I think they are going to be better because they made a good hire. Tennessee fans, y'all suffered a decade of dysfunction believing that you can just hire anybody and win 10 games because of your tradition. What you did before this century matters 0% into how good of a program you are. So it matters. Texas A&M hasn't won anything. I agree. Neither has Tennessee, because Tennessee, nothing before 2000 counts. All right. And if you think anything before 2000 counts, you're probably somebody who thinks Bozo the Clown is still relevant. All right. So it's not a thing. Doesn't matter. I don't care what Tennessee did in 1998, and I certainly don't care what they did in the 1950s. Since the turn of the century, Tennessee and Texas A&M have accomplished exactly the same thing, which is they both won 0 championships. Period. End of story. Same with Missouri. So it becomes, what is a better job? And Texas A&M has more resources. Speaking of, by the way, because you brought up Auburn, we got to talk about this before we get out of here. Auburn's lost to New Mexico State over the weekend.
Bad.
Like Hugh Freeze and all. Here's a stat for you. Auburn was a 24 point favorite. They lost by 21. That's a 45-point swing. So going through my SEC power rankings, just want to finish those real quick. I had Tennessee 6, A&M 7, South Carolina 8, Kentucky 9, Arkansas 10, Florida 11, Mississippi State 12, Auburn 13, and Vanderbilt 14. Dave, as bad as Vanderbilt is, who didn't play this weekend, should I have considered dropping Auburn below Vanderbilt for losing like that to New Mexico State?
Sure, that's fine with me. And here's the other thing that Gus Malzahn needs to remember: he doesn't have the long leash.
Hugh Freeze, you mean?
Or Hugh Freeze, excuse me. He doesn't have the long leash that another coach might have because of his past discrepancies. I'll go ahead and tell you, I think that Going back to the Texas A&M and Tennessee thing, I think they're on the second level of job where you don't just walk in and expect to win a championship, that you walk in and you've got to do some work. I think places like Georgia and Alabama and what they've turned those two programs into are those programs. I thought that Notre Dame was that 25 years ago. I don't think that anymore. But I think there's a second tier of you've got to have some good fortune and you've got to have some good success in recruiting. I think Texas A&M and Tennessee are on that plane. If I was a coach asked to be the head coach at Tennessee or Texas A&M, I would take Tennessee. So you and I differ there a little bit, but it's not night and day.
But they're in the same tier, you would agree, right?
They're definitely in the same tier.
So the reason Tennessee's had more success, even if you go back through history, is Tennessee has had, I guess you would say, better management and better luck, if anything else. And quite honestly, yeah, I think Tennessee's in a tier with A&M. I think Notre Dame is in that tier, and Michigan's. I think Notre Dame's a tier below. Notre Dame may be the worst job in college football. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. But Michigan's in that tier.
Challenging. It's the only school that a head coach has no say over discipline and no say over admittance.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Those are two big things.
And also, so Tennessee is on the level of Michigan. Tennessee and Michigan are similar jobs, along with Texas A&M. I think Michigan has that same problem, where Tennessee and Michigan have the issue where they both think, for the longest time, Michigan still thinks this, that any coach can walk in and be a championship. No, you're not Ohio State. You got to think a little bit more creatively.
Boy, everybody hates Texas A&M.